Alright, a trilogy that I have not seen in a minute, starring two extremely memorable faces, the Rush Hour trilogy. This I picked up for like 10 American dollars. It was amazing. Super cheap, obviously. Got it online, and it's been out for a while. Had to check it out. This is actually a 5-discer, okay? So you got each film on your separate discs, and then you got two bonus discs. One actual bonus disc, which features basically a reunion between Jackie Chan and the director Brett Ratner. Excuse me, Brett Ratner, and just basically going through their experiences in Rush Hour 1 and how that film came to be developed. And then the fifth disc, which is basically special features that have been imported from previous discs. You got like deleted scenes, trailers, outtakes, which are famous in these, and like the making of Rush Hour 3 and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. I like when releases like this, make some nice package design and get their own separate discs that they design pretty well as well. So they don't half-ass it, and they don't charge an arm and a leg for it anyway, clearly, because I've seen this go for like 20, 25 bucks, and when I saw it for 10 American, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to take that. So, getting a little chatty about them, I remember the second one being my favorite when I was younger. I remember watching the first one for sure. I only remember parts of the third one, so I don't think I really got through the third one. I don't think it really caught my interest, to be honest, when I was a teen or whenever it came out. That I watched it for the first time. It just never really, you know, caught my my attention very much. But the second one is definitely the one that I remember the most. I remember watching the most, and I remember liking the most. As for the first, it's been so long, and I really was looking forward to watching these again, and I thought it'd be a perfect opportunity to do the entire trilogy at once. So I have no idea how long this review is going to go, but we'll see what happens. Starting with Rush Hour 1, it's a buddy cop film, obviously starring two polar opposites, one detective from China and one detective from Los Angeles. Um, you know, the loudmouth Chris Tucker. And they play into that a lot, and they make a lot of jokes with that throughout the series where Chris Tucker is basically the mouthpiece, and Jackie Chan is basically the physical piece. Like he has the physical humor, whereas Chris Tucker has the vocal humor, and they play around with that a lot. So Jackie Chan plays Detective Lee, and Chris Tucker plays Detective Carter, and he gives a full-out Chris Tucker performance. You either love the guy or hate the guy. I'm kind of in the middle. Not hate, but like he can go over the top, and it'll be a little much for a lot of people in a lot of roles. But he bounces off Jackie Chan really well in this one. So yeah, Detective Lee is called to America when this counselor Han, who basically is in charge of the Chinese, what do you call it? Chinese embassy in Los Angeles, when there's the kidnapping of his daughter. And Chris Tucker is obviously, he's put on the case, but I love how he's unaware of what his actual job is. He thinks he's like a private detective working for the FBI to go look for this little girl, and turns out that his actual job is to basically keep Detective Lee in check, because the Mafia don't want either of them involved, and the Mafia want to take care of the situation themselves. So basically Carter's mission ends up to be babysitting this fresh off the boat Chinese man, or Chinese detective, while everybody investigates the missing daughter. Well, of course, Carter ends up going rogue in the situation, and him and Lee decide to investigate it themselves. Well, Carter mostly, and tries to keep Lee out of it because he wants to be the hero, but they end up really working well together, and there's hilarity all throughout, and a bunch of stuff, you know, goes on while this investigation for this missing girl goes on. Tima plays the Chinese counselor who he shows up in a lot, especially recently. He's in Mulan as Mulan's father, and he was in one of my favorite films of the year and of all time, The Favorite. So he's definitely cool in here to see him a little bit younger. Tom Wilkinson plays a perfect villain. He's pretty threatening in here, but he also has that villain-esque to him. Um, when the little girl, right before she's kidnapped, she's singing in the limo, and it's so stereotypical. I mean, she's singing this like '90s Britney Spears-esque song, and the guys driving is just like, oh, it's so funny. Yeah, it's I don't know. It's just one of those scenes that screams '90s and the genre of film that it is, kind of thing. The "What's Up My N-Word" scene just kills me every time at the bar. And Jackie Chan, in the bonus disc, actually, when he's talking about that scene, he literally, at the time, didn't even know what it meant. So he was pretty natural with it. Like, he was pretty genuine with it, that he had no idea what he was saying. And he just says it no problem because, yeah, and you know the whole don't say the N-word thing is a pretty Western thing, not an Eastern thing. So, yeah, I just one thing I hate that drives me crazy is when people are trying to talk somebody who don't speak or trying to talk to somebody who don't speak their language, and they think speaking louder is going to make that person understand. It drives me crazy. It's the dumbest thing that somebody can possibly think. So Chris is all like, "You understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?" It's like, buddy, he's not going to understand you just because you're screaming in his face. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Oh, that's such a pet peeve of mine when I see people do that. It drives me bonkers. Yeah, so he can't even keep Lee in check, really, and Lee also wants to do his own thing because he really does care about this little girl and wants to protect the Chinese embassy of, you know, Los Angeles, him being Chinese and everything. And being a detective himself, he really takes this seriously, even though the FBI kind of want to keep him away from the situation. There's a scene where Chris Tucker's ordering Chinese food, and he's like, "I don't want no grease, I don't want no greasy food. What, you got some chicken wings and ribs or fries back here?" I'm like, oh my gosh. No greasy Chinese food, but, you know, greasy ribs, greasy wings, and greasy chicken is absolutely just fine. And then the Asian cook, he's like, "I ain't no punk, bitch." I love that. And then the end fight too. I love the fight at the end, and all the choreography in here is fantastic, even with Chris Tucker. But like I said at the beginning, how they play him being the mouthpiece and or having the vocal comedy and Chan having the physical comedy, it works perfectly. And they're trying to have this huge battle at the end of the movie, this climax where they're amongst all these artifacts, and Jackie Chan especially is trying to protect all the artifacts while doing kung fu and martial arts and all that. It's hilarious. So it's like the first one is pretty much your perfect buddy cop film, with polar opposite buddy cops, which usually obviously make the best ones. But it's a good film. I liked it a lot better revisiting it, especially as an adult, and I definitely recommend the first one for sure. It's a '90s classic, hands down. Rush Hour 2 starts in China, which they flew to, obviously, at the end of the first one. And it starts off with a bombing at the American embassy in China. And the main villain in this one was a big reason why Rush Hour 2 was my favorite when I first watched it, played by Zhang Zi. And she's one of my favorite Chinese actresses for sure. And she just plays this striking, sexy, thin but badass villain who doesn't take any shit and will actually mess you up, and is kind of evil, but she has such a presence to her, and she's so sophisticated and holds the screen a lot. She really holds her presence on screen a lot, and I always remember that. So I always loved her in this film. And yeah, you get this bombing, and they kind of start to investigate that, and it leads them to America because there's a whole plot involving secret services who are trying to dig up this counterfeit crime that has been going on. You kind of find out that out in the middle of the film with millions of dollars in counterfeit money and a counterfeit press that has been sold to the Iranians through the black market, and you get this whole kind of complicated plot that you have to kind of piece together. But yeah, it still plays out pretty cool where they go this time back to Los Angeles where they discover this casino that's completely underground. There's a front, like a Chinese restaurant front, where Don Cheadle actually makes an appearance, and I don't remember him in this film until now, and I'm like, that's John Cheadle. I love it. And he plays this really kind of shady, I don't know what you would call him. Just this guy that basically works in this like underground gambling, like shady behind the scenes business kind of place with all these Chinese guys, and he speaks Chinese in the movie pretty good. Him and Chris Tucker, though, their banter back and forth is just amazing. I love the scene where Chris Tucker, where he's trying to buy that chicken, and he doesn't want the woman to kill the chicken, so he just ends up buying the chicken alive. And he's starting to carry the chicken everywhere. Scenes with chickens, man, they make me laugh. They make me laugh every time. Yeah, chickens are just one of the funniest animals that you can put on screen, and there's not really any reason why. They're just funny. They make me laugh. They always get me cracking up every time. So Chris Tucker's carrying this chicken all over China. You know, before they go to the States, and I always love it. He ends up in this brothel in China also, where he gets to pick basically through an array of like 50 girls, and he gets to pick anyone he wants. And Jackie Chan like interrupts him, and then he drops, of course, a line like, "Don't jump in front of a black man in a buffet line, don't you know that?" or something like that. Yeah, the one-liners are fantastic. I love the scene at the beginning of the film where Lee finds out that he has to go undercover with Chris to a nightclub, but all Chris wants to do, or Carter, played by Chris Tucker, all he wants to do is party in China, and then he doesn't tell Carter that they're going to this club undercover. He just goes to the club with him, and Chris Tucker, you know, is partying all there, starts doing karaoke. That's another thing I love about the Rush Hour films that I should mention is they're very musical. And I love how Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker are always grooving with each other to the "What is it good for? Absolutely nothing." And there's songs like that throughout that really theme the film, especially with the first one with the "What is it good for?" And then there's other songs that come in through the second and the third. But they're always grooving and dancing, and like music is a big part of the trilogy. And I really like that. I got a kick out of that for sure, because it makes all of the films that much more memorable. And yeah, I love him at the club. He's doing karaoke to Michael Jackson. "Don't stop till you get enough." And then there's this scene where he is trying to learn Chinese, but he doesn't know how to speak it well, and then everything he says is coming out the wrong way. And he's trying to get Jackie Chan to translate for him, and then Jackie Chan doesn't always say the right things either on purpose. I like that. But yeah, that's about it. And then you get the whole climax where it ends in the counterfeit money being used in a fraudulent casino, where the money is being circulated through the casino and nobody knows that it's fake, obviously. I like how they find out what's counterfeit and what's real money by burning it. I don't know if that were like, I wonder if that is how they do it in real life too, where it burns red if it's fake and black if it's real or something like that. Yeah. When Jackie Chan gets the bomb in his mouth, That's pretty brutal with the tape, and he can't speak, and he's like, the banter between Carter again. He's like, "Why didn't you just tell me there was a bomb in your mouth?" I was like, boy. So good. So yeah, Rush Hour 2 I think remains my favorite, but they're just like a hair apart. I don't know. I think Rush Hour 2 probably is my favorite because of nostalgia, but I mean, you can't really compete one against the other because Rush Hour is such a classic. But I still put Rush Hour number 2 as my personal favorite, and I certainly recommend both. I recommend the trilogy. I'm just going to say that right off the bat. However, getting into the third, I will say that the third is my least favorite and a lot of people's least favorites. I mean, you only have so much juice to work with, right? But this one starts off, which I didn't really like, with a little bit more tension between Carter and Lee, with differences, because they introduced this weird plot where the girl who was undercover in the second movie ended up either sleeping with or dating Chris Tucker, and Jackie Chan's character Lee got jealous about it, something like that, or maybe the other way around. He was dating her, like Lee was dating her, and then Chris Tucker came around and took her, or something like that. But they didn't show it in the movie. They just kind of talked about it, and they really gave you a really quick update on it, and it was like, okay, that came out of nowhere. What does that need to happen for? The little girl, Soo Young, the little girl who was kidnapped in the first film, returns, obviously older, and she's played by a different actress, and I think she's supposed to be maybe like 18 or 19 in the film, but the actress that plays her is 27 at the time of the shooting, and jeez, she is one smoking girl. Whew. When I saw her, I was like, is that Soo Young again, grown up? Shit. And then I looked it up to see if it was the same actress, but it's not. Which is too bad, but hey, you know. I think the little girl who played in the first one would still be too young to play an adult Soo Young in this one, so. The giant guy in the karate class, if anybody doesn't know, is actually that big. I looked it up. I'm like, that guy doesn't, no way, especially when he's standing beside them. Now, I don't know if they kind of shrunk Jackie Chan a little bit and Chris Tucker to make him look bigger, but that guy is legitimately 7 foot something. Or almost 8. I don't know. He's huge. He doesn't look real. He looks like on stilts huge, but actually he's that tall. So yeah, he exists, and he's still alive, and I just found that crazy. I was like, whoa, that guy's huge. The thing about Rush Hour 3 when it comes to the jokes is they don't all land. A lot of them are flat, and just they're not overdone because they're not repetitive really. But it's like they ran out of ideas when it comes to one-liners and jokes. And when you're comparing the first two films, they just don't really do justice in comparison. However, there are a couple lines and one scene in particular that is the funniest in the entire trilogy. So although this film doesn't hit the buttons and the notes that the first two nail throughout, there is one scene in Rush Hour 3 that is the funniest scene in the three films, hands down. And that's where the Asian guy who speaks French is tied to the chair, and the nun comes to translate to Carter and Lee what the guy speaking French is saying. And they don't want to swear in front of the nun, and the band, she's translating what he's saying, and then he's speaking in French to her, and she's translating it back, and he's making fun of the two, and then they start insulting each other, but they don't speak each other's languages, so they have to go by translation. He's like, and the nun is like, okay, he used the N-word again, but this time he also mentioned your grandmother. He's like, tell this S-word that I will F-word him up. And then, of course, totally unexpected. You when the scene is done and they're leaving, what does Chris Tucker say to them? He's like, "Thank you, sister," and she's like, "No problem, brother." This little French nut. No problem, brother. Gives him the whole like high five handshake thing. I the funniest scene in the trilogy. It is. It is. I'm sorry. It doesn't have to be the best film in the trilogy, but it is the funniest scene in the trilogy for sure. And then the other line that I love is when Jackie Chan is fighting the woman in the hotel room, I think, and Chris Tucker's on the outside, and he's hearing everything, and it sounds like he's moaning sexually, and Carter drops the whole line, "Come on, Crouching Tiger, don't hide that dragon." That made me chuckle too. So good. Again, with the musical stuff, there's so many songs in here that they start grooving to. I didn't really like how there was tension between them, and it kind of went in a direction where they were kind of bitter with each other. But then there was things that started to show that they loved each other's cultures, because Carter would go eat Chinese food, mushu, which he was introduced to by Jackie Chan, and then Jackie Chan went to order like I forget, it was fried chicken or something like that, but yeah, and then they started listening to each other's music, and Chris Tucker's watching Indiana Jones, and the little Asian kid reminds him of Lee, and Lee's watching some African channel and reminds him of Tucker, of course. Is this film racist? A lot? I don't know. Or the trilogy, I should say. It's here and there. I don't know. It's product of its time, but it also doesn't go too far with like racist jokes and stuff like that. A lot of the jokes are more kind of like well-spirited, not mean-spirited, like well-spirited, where it's like buddy bonding kind of jokes, and slapstick humor kind of jokes, and working together kind of jokes, from like culture shock jokes kind of thing. It doesn't touch on racism a whole lot, but I mean, obviously you're dealing with a black guy from Los Angeles and an Asian guy from China, so it comes with the territory. And of course, Rush Hour #1. What's up, Matt? What did you just say? Such an innocence in his face. It's great. Yeah, as for story in the third one too, it's kind of a little bit convoluted, but it just involves Magen's character, Council Han. He gets shot in the beginning of the film, and they're trying to find out who did it. Lee's brother is introduced, which is kind of cool, but I mean, he played a good character, his brother. I forget what his name was, but maybe I wrote it down. But yeah, mostly it's the jokes that kind of relive their buddy cop experiences, and kind of give you a decent conclusion, unless they make a Rush Hour 4, which I've heard talk about, but who knows if that'll happen. And yeah, like there's a big trope that they use a lot, falling from buildings. They're always falling from buildings, and always like trying to hang on to shit, and and they do it so much throughout the trilogy that it ends up being funny. It's like, oh great, they're falling off another building again, or they have to jump. We gotta jump! Like the 12th time through the whole trilogy. It's funny. This one it takes place in Paris for a lot of this one too, so it did kind of give me like a spy movie vibe a little bit, with some motorcycle chases and stuff like that. A little bit Bond-ish, a little bit like Bourne Identity-ish. So it touches on that a bit, and I found that pretty cool. Gives it a little bit of a different flavor than, your same tropes and same locations kind of thing. I like how they switch it up a little bit throughout from 1 to 3 kind of thing. The sword fighting is cool. Although the Eiffel Tower fight at the end is really freaking far-fetched, it's still okay. and it's still fun to watch. But yeah, it's not the strongest entry point in the trilogy, although it does conclude the trilogy fairly well and hands down has the funniest scene in all three of the films. So yeah, this thing is really cheap. Still, I mean, it's available in a lot of places, and you get your thick Blu-ray with 5 discs in there, separate, like I've showed you, and artwork's cool, really cool actually. I love the like the design of it. It looks really neat. But yeah, that's the whole trilogy. I loved revisiting it. I loved talking about it, and I mean it's pretty family friendly for sure, unless you're sensitive to like crude jokes, I guess. I don't know. It's pretty family friendly though, I would say. And unless, you know, you're like 3 or something, but even then, everything's gonna go over your head. Gun violence, sword violence, martial arts violence. It's all mild shit. Good stuff. I loved it, and I loved revisiting it, so, and loved talking about it. So subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you like hearing my voice, or if you like listening to my reviews, and obviously there will be plenty more coming, so until next time, I will be back. Have a great night, and cheers.